Theatrical Shenanigans with
Mitch McFarland.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Theatrical Shenanigans as we manoeuvre past the halfway point. I do hope you enjoyed the plays and guests we've had so far and are ready to enjoy another episode with me, your host, Rachel Feeney-Williams, and the wonderful guest we have for this episode. My guest today is based in Oklahoma, USA, with a BFA in theatrical performance and has an extensive background in creating small-scale local theatre on a shoestring budget. He's previously hosted 2 role-playing game podcasts, one entitled Marvel Cinematic Universe Lorecast and the other entitled Mass Effect Blue Shift. He recently moved into the voice acting field where he became the writer and director of The Avengers, the audio drama. The first and second episode you can find on Spotify, and we'll include the link in our episode info. A very warm welcome to Mitch McFarland.
Hello.
It's great to have you. So as always, we start right at the very beginning. How did you get started in the theatre world?
I followed a girl.
Oh,
Yeah. I got started in college. And the theater professor, head of the department, kind of took me under his wing and really inspired me to get into it. And I learned so much from him. Went on to get my bachelor's, specifically a bachelor's of fine arts at the University of Central Oklahoma. And then I started 2 separate theater companies, and that's where I went from there.
So obviously a lot of your experience early on talks about the directing side of things. What made you decide that was what you wanted to do?
I picked up a script. It was a mammoth, Bobby Gould in Hell, and I just loved it. To 1 act, and so I was like, "Hey, Brent, I want to direct this one, and I need to do something for my capstone. So can I do that for my capstone?" He was like, "Sure, put it together." I mean, I love being on stage. I love being an actor just as much as directing. But I have learned over time to be able to harness the creative direction to get people in the same room, on the same page. Like, let's do this way. And people follow through on that fairly well.
It's often said that directors are professional people wranglers.
That is true. Yes.
And then obviously from there you spanned outwards into podcasting. What made you decide that was something you wanted to do?
COVID happened, and I started, like, you can't get together, can't do anything. And so I started looking at audio, the electronic parts of audio. That's how I started doing stuff. It was a means to express my creativity, because sitting around the house just wasn't working for me. I had to do something, and this art is so collaborative. You can't do it by yourself.
One other thing I need to talk about, simply because I'm a huge fan of RPGs, where did those original podcasts come from?
So Mass Effect is from, I was listening to another live action play RPG, right? And I was like, my gaming group is fairly creative. We all get together and whatnot. And so I was like, "Hey guys, do we want to do a podcast?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure, why not? Whatever. Come on, Mitch." And so we started doing Mass Effect, because my wife really liked the Fate system, and she's very big on true crime. So I was like, "Okay, you create cases however you want to do it, and we will solve them as part of the show." And she's like, "Okay, that can be fun." As for the MCU, I was listening to the Mass Effect Lorecast, became very close friends with one of the hosts, actually. And I was like, well, I like Marvel.
And just last before we move on, do you have a stand-up moment that has made you think, yeah, this is why I do this?
Yeah, I do. I was in Midsummer Night's Dream. And I had to play Francis Flute. who gets the lady role in the play within the play.
Yeah.
And they for my lady part, they handed me this like nasty Cher wig, this god awful floral dress, and 3-inch lime green heels.
Wow.
And so they shoved me out on stage, and I stand there for a second, and the whole place just erupts in laughter of just this sheer stupidity of this costume. This like the audacity of this thing. And I never learned to walk in the heels, so I'm just clomping all over the place. And then my falsetto voice, it's just like I come back off from that one and everyone's just like, okay, yeah, you nailed it. It's like, yep.
And now we move on to our playwright and play for this episode. Bruce Deveau is an actor, writer and director in the North Shore of Massachusetts, where he lives with his husband James, who is also a playwright and poet. He's been a member of the Playwrights Collaborative, which operates out of Newburyport, Massachusetts, for about 5 years, and part of the leadership of the group for the past 2. The group also has had a travelling troupe for the past 2 years and have presented shows in the region and expanded outwards for ranging up to 2 hours away, Maine, New Hampshire and Connecticut so far. Bruce's play is called The Book Tour and began as an idea about what it might be like to be a touring musician, the pitfalls, consequences and hopefully redemption. Bruce says, "One of my favourite artists for nearly 50 years has been Paul Weller, so this character is very, very loosely based on him and the activism of his early work with the Jam." Theatrical Shenanigans presents The Book Tour by Bruce Deveau.
Hello and welcome everyone to a special edition of our Book Nook Author Talkback series. This evening we have a capacity crowd for our special guest, who has achieved something extraordinary for a first-time author. He's ignited the imagination and political activism of young adults with a worldwide bestseller. He's here all the way from Great Britain, and I can't believe how lucky we are to have him here in Oswego. Please give a warm Book Nook welcome to Mr. Nigel Finger. Well, Mr. Finger, welcome to Oswego, and congratulations on the success of your new book.
Why, thank you.
We have a copy here, of course. It's titled Punk Baby, which is a nod to your days as a punk rock guitarist.
Right.
Well, what an exciting life you must lead, and music and adoring fans. I'm dying to hear about your writing. But first, tell us all a little about yourself and your music.
Well, me and my mates all grew up listening to the Beatles and the Stones, of course. And I was interested in playing music, dreaming of a ticket out of a little Yorkshire mining town. My father bought me a guitar and we had a band when we was in school. But my interest really took off when I first heard the Sex Pistols.
I understand that punk rock can be rather, gritty, but I will remind you, Mr. Finger, that this event is G-rated.
Right. Please, call me Nigel.
Of course, Mr. Nigel.
Well, suddenly, we went from wanting to be John Lennon to wanting to be Johnny Rotten. So I would say the Pistols changed everything.
What was it about punk music that interested you?
Well, at the time, in working class England, there was this struggle, this desperation, this anger. Punk was a way for a kid with no opportunities to push back.
And how did you get your start?
Well, me and the boys moved around a lot in the early years, but things really sorted when we landed a gig backing up the Ramones here in the States.
Oh, the Ramones. You opened up for the Ramones here in the States. Really?
Well, sort of.
Sort of. Either you did or you didn't.
We were the opener for the Ramones.
I see.
Yeah, we even came through this little town. We played at the Speedway.
You played here in Oswego, at the Speedway. Well, isn't that fascinating? You played here in Oswego at the Speedway. Well, tell me, When was that, Mr. Finger?
You can call me Nigel.
Of course, Mr. Nigel. And what year would you say that was? The year you came through our little town and opened for the opening act for the Ramones.
Oh, I would say it would have to have been 1982.
Oh, 1982. Right here in Oswego, at the Speedway. You don't say. You're sure it was 1982?
Right, 1982.
82. Are you sure? How can you be sure?
Right. I'm sure because of some special dates in that year.
Oh, that's all very interesting, isn't it? You and your band played your way through Oswego in 1982. Well, enough about your music. Let's talk about your book. Your fascinating, best-selling book. What would you say your inspiration was?
My inspiration was my grandchildren.
Oh, that's wonderful. My grandchildren are such a gift. You and your wife must be very proud.
Actually, I'm not married. Never have been.
I see. Well, how many grandchildren do you have?
So far? 347.
Excuse me?
347.
I'm sorry, I was asking about how many grandchildren you have.
That's right. 347.
I don't understand.
Right. 214 children, 347 grandchildren. I got a DNA test. The DNA test makes these links. It tells you...
I know how a DNA test works. And it confirmed you have 214 children and 347 grandchildren?
Well, yeah. Those are the ones we know about.
How is that even possible?
Well, you see, we were touring with the Ramones, and in 1982, the Ramones was popular. I mean, really popular. I didn't know it was a thing back then when we signed on the tour, but the Ramones were so popular. Girls all over the world wanted to have a baby Ramone. It was kind of a competition.
A competition? To have a baby by one of the Ramones?
I told you they were popular. I mean, the girls, they even named the kids after a Ramone. That was part of the competition. In fact, as far as I can tell, all my kids are called Joey, Johnny, Dee Dee, or Tommy. All 214 of them.
Well, that sounds terrible. Taking advantage of a young girl's fantasy.
I wasn't taking advantage of nothing. The girls, they just threw themselves at me.
But wait, you said young girls wanted to have a baby by Ramone. You weren't a Ramone. You weren't even the opening act. You were the opener for the opener.
Right. All I had to say was I was touring with the Ramones, and that was it. Bam.
But the Ramones were American. From Queens.
Right.
You're obviously British.
Yeah, the girls didn't seem to mind.
Oh, so you tricked young women into having cold, meaningless, animalistic sex with you in the back of a filthy-smelling tour van out of some misguided notion that you were a Ramone?
I thought you said this was a G-rated event.
Well, maybe some of those girls just went to the concert to forget about their dismal little existence. Maybe they had never even heard of the Ramones, let alone some pathetic competition.
It wasn't like we was doing background checks.
Maybe they didn't even like the music. How could they call it music? It was terrible. And I don't even remember the opener, let alone the opener for the opener.
So you was there?
Isn't that becoming obvious?
So you was...
Not was, you idiot. Were. As in, you were one of the girls who got pregnant that night at Oswego Speedway.
What, with one of the Ramones?
No. With a British guitar player. How was I supposed to know the Ramones weren't British?
You don't remember our set?
Of course I don't remember your set.
It was a good set.
I didn't even know what punk rock music was. I was majoring in French literature and medieval polyphonetics, for Christ's sake. I only went to your stupid show because my sisters talked me into it.
So you...
We just got swept up in the action. Some guy invited us backstage to meet the band, and I didn't want to get separated. And before I knew it, I was...
Throwing yourself at me.
Throwing myself at you. I guess back then I thought having sex with a rock star would be a ticket out of my miserable little town.
So you're...
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, twins.
Yes, twins. And grandchildren. You said you have grandchildren.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, 4.
Yes. And by any chance, have they ever had a DNA test?
Not that I know of.
Yes. So that makes 216 and 352.
I can't believe you could be so...
What are their names, the twins?
My Joseph and Jonathan, they turned 40 this year. But I guess you know that.
Joey and Johnny. Excellent.
And you may be interested to know that they're really close with their cousins, Deirdre and Thomas. They're 40 as well. But I guess you know that too.
Dee Dee and Tommy. Fantastic. And by any chance?
No, they were apparently with an actual Ramon, not a fake.
I was not a fake. I was the opening act.
Oh, you opened up lots of things.
Hey, it was you who threw yourself at me.
Finally, he gets the first person singular correct. As in, it was you who left a trail of fatherless children across the continent.
I don't blame you for getting mad, but I'm glad you never got out of Oswego. I'm glad you opened this little bookstore.
Thanks a lot. Why? What do you mean?
Well, otherwise I might not have found you and my boys.
I wouldn't call them your boys.
I know. I have a lot to make up for.
Just because you happened to come through here today.
Didn't just happen.
What are you saying?
When I took the DNA test and learned I was father to so many children, I knew I had to do something. Those were crazy times back then. But now with Me Too and all, I figured I should try and make things right.
And how do you plan to do that?
I thought if my book tour followed the same stops as the Ramones tour, I might have a chance to meet them.
You wrote a book just as an excuse to go on tour?
Well, pretty much.
It's been 40 years. You're a little late.
I know it's late, but it's never too late. I'd like to meet them all, every single one if they let me. And the grandkids, I'd like to meet them too.
And how do you expect to make it up to them after all these years?
I'm hoping they'll let me send my grandkids to college.
What are you talking about? You can't send 349...
352?
Okay. You can't send 352 kids to college.
Of course I can.
How are you going to do that? You were the opener for the opener for...
No, not from the record earnings. That was rubbish.
Not to mention the music.
I guess I deserve that.
Right.
No. After the tour with the Ramones, things with the band pretty much fell apart. But I'll always be a punk rocker. I mean, not for the lifestyle, but for the pushing back, for the opportunity to make it. You make it out of places like Yorkshire, and if you want, Oswego.
So how are you...
Over the last 20 years, I've been... Well, to be honest, this isn't my first book. It's just the first I've written under my real name.
Nigel Finger is your real name?
Right.
So what name have you been writing under?
Well, let's just say there's a good chance your grandchildren have been reading those for years.
Oh, you must be... I thought I recognized that style. I've been promoting and selling your books for decades.
And because of that, I've made a pile of money. And I won't stop until I've spent it all on them. Beverly, your grandchildren, I mean, that is our grandchildren, all of them, if they want, they're going to college. First class.
I can't believe it. Oh, Mr. Finger.
Please, call me Nigel.
Well, it's always nice to see an attempt to make things right. That was Jeff Tullin as Nigel Finger and Dana Hall as Beverly Cleveland with the book tour by Bruce Deveau. So, Mitch, what did you think?
I thought it was very well written. It clipped. It moved along. I think being an American, I think some of the English humor went right over my head. And that's on me. I will fully accept that Americanism of just not getting it.
But there's always that question though with English plays, because we've had this before where I question whether it would translate to the US, and some people would say yes it would, and some people say no it wouldn't, and that's okay because that's kind of like your testing pool. Because when you're a writer with a play, your hope and dream obviously most of the time is that it will go national and international, and the question you have to ask is, will it translate internationally?
No, absolutely. After I got through with it, like the themes of, I got the feeling it's redemption that this guy that Nigel's looking for, and to go do the right thing finally. Although in totally ethical sense, what he was doing in the 80s was just mind-boggling unethical. Like,
yes.
Wow. And so, like, okay, I'm glad he's finally come around to like go do the right thing, but man, talk about really screwing the pooch.
Yeah. But it's also, for me, it's quite amusing because you start to think about how many of these conversations has he had? Have they all reacted this way? Have some of them just been, no, I don't want your money, end of story? And it starts to make you think kind of outside the little bubble of what you see and what you hear. It's like I say, the previous conversations he's had, you think about how he and Beverly met to start with, and the more you think about it, the more you think, Jesus, this is an epic soap opera in itself.
Yeah. Yes.
And you think, because Bruce talks about being inspired by, you know, what goes on tour, and you do think that obviously musicians, especially in the 70s and 80s, when it was cool to be that kind of rock and roll lifestyle, there's probably a few where this story rings maybe not to this extent, but a little on the nose as to, you know, what happens on tour stays on tour until it's standing in front of you.
Yeah, going, hey, you know, where's my back pay and child support? Yeah. And this is obviously a very big extreme. Like, of course, stuff like this probably did happen on many music tours, just probably not to the tune of 214 children.
Yeah. But how did he ever find time to perform? That's my question, because that's a hell of a lot.
Right? Like, even if you, I don't know how many cities were on this tour, but
yeah,
you would have to have hit a lot of a lot of cities.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% certain if it says the best things about the fans of the Ramones.
No, but again, I think it's a cultural difference. So back then, it was just a thing you did. And I think it was even more so earlier on. So you go back to like the 60s and the 70s, and it was perfectly acceptable to throw pants at musicians when they were on stage. Whereas now we're kind of a bit like, maybe not.
Yeah, keep that on. Just
but yeah, I like the fact that it was very much I think Beverly thought that she was going to stop him in his tracks with this kind of news, but he was obviously more than prepared for what she had to say and what he was about to face, because obviously he's had this conversation before.
And he's definitely thought it through. You take notes after a while of like, okay, you don't say that, you say this, you say it like this. Like,
yeah. You have to think that if he actually noted down the names of these women, his little black book would look like the Bible. It'd be
you could kill a guy with that.
Yeah. Like that, you get like sackfuls of Father's Day cards. It's just it's insane. The more as extreme an idea as it is, it does cause you as an audience member to think, wow, there are probably people out there who this rings a bit true for, because huge families and, you know, a lot of extramarital goings on were in a way popular with musicians back in the day. So yes, we are almost out of time, but Mitch, your final overall thought on the whole piece?
It's fun. It's extreme, but it's very fun in its extremism of it, of being highly unethical and then coming around for your redemption to be like, thankfully I made a bunch of money, so don't be mad at me. I mean, I feel like had he been dirt poor and then was coming around being like, yeah, I fathered 200 plus children, this would be sad. This would have been very sad.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. We are out of time, but Mitch, thank you so much for joining us and discussing the play with me.
Not a problem. This was great.
And that brings our 6th episode to an end. Thank you so much to Mitch, Jeff, Dana and Bruce for making this episode a possibility, and thank you for you to listening to it. We'll be back in a fortnight with our next episode, but please don't forget our submission window for season 4, which will air in January 2025, is still open. So if you're a playwright out there with a piece that's between 15 and 20 pages long, with a maximum of 4 characters that you can see having a place on Theatrical Shenanigans, then by all means send it in to rfwscripts.com. And if you're a listener looking to support the show, then don't forget you can do so on our Facebook, Instagram, Buy Me a Coffee or Etsy page. I look forward to being here with you for our next episode, but in the meantime though, I've been Rachel Feeney-Williams, this is Theatrical Shenanigans, bringing down the curtain and saying, I hope you can join us next time. Theatrical Shenanigans is part of an RFW Scripts production, found on Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, and anywhere else you can find your podcasts. Music is written and produced by Chris Cody.